Good morning, everybody. How you doing? This is Brian Smith here for the Scale Up Project, a financial empowerment project looking to educate, to empower, to inform Canadians across the country from coast to coast. It is an initiative put forth by the Multicultural and Diversity Project. Today, we will be getting into episode number 3 as we speak to seniors across this beautiful province of Quebec and hearing their fabulous stories around money and finances. And today I have Gina Simmons. Is that correct?
Gina May Simmons.
Gina May. Gina May. Where does that May come from, Gina?
Actually, my father worked at one point in time with Air Canada, and there was a very vibrant lady, and he just loved her. So apparently he named me after her. Gina
May, because we kind of have that little southern ring to it. Gina May Simmons.
That's exactly
Well, thank you very much for coming in today. We are recording here at the CDAH, which is the Community Digital Arts Hub, an initiative of the English Language Arts Network, taking care of all the technical aspects of this podcast. So, Gina, we are here talking to you. We want to hear about your stories, your history around money and finance. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I am a new senior.
So what is an old senior? You're a new senior? Or?
No, put it this way. My birthday was in February, and I became an official senior.
Senior, okay.
Yes. So,
how does it feel?
Great. At least I get to ride Metro free.
For free. Okay, that's one thing. Okay. If there's one thing, yes. If you're listening out there, yes, here in Montreal, the mayor, the city has provided. Is this for an indefinite period of time or just for the summer?
To my knowledge, it's indefinite.
Free Metro.
Free Metro.
Free bus.
Free bus.
Wow. Okay.
On the island of Montreal.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And wherever I go, now I say, do you have a senior's discount?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
My mother used to say that and used to embarrass me totally. But now I get it because what I find is that a lot of times there are things available to people. Okay. And all you really have to do is ask.
Ask for it, yeah.
Okay? And if you ask, all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is available or that is available. Mm-hmm. So that's one good thing about being a senior.
Okay, but your history, I mean, where are you from originally?
Okay, so I was born and raised, actually I was born in Montreal, specifically at the Catherine Booth Hospital.
Such as myself.
Yes.
Okay, it was a birthing, so if people are listening out there, Catherine Booth in NDG was a birthing center. Now it's a readaptation center,
yes, or a place for elderly people as well, right? Yes. So, and I was raised in NDG, right? My mother, on my maternal side, she was born and raised in Montreal. Okay. Her mother was born in Jamaica, but she came from Jamaica to Canada, specifically Toronto, I think when she was like 17 and a half, 18 years old, part of the domestic program. And then from there, what I understand was she met her husband, Mr. Blackwood. Okay. I don't know that much about him. Unfortunately, he died at 55 years old, so I don't know anything. But he met her, and he was one of the porters on the train. Because at that point in time, when Black people migrated from the islands, fortunately or unfortunately, they were able to get jobs, but the jobs were limited. Porter for males, domestics for females. So my grandmother migrated to Montreal because the CN head office was here, right? And my father, he is originally from Bermuda, from a merchant's family. Oh. And
when you say merchants,
they own stores.
Let the people know when we say merchants.
Okay, so my father's family, the Simmons is in Bermuda, come from a long line of, they call them merchants, so store owners, teachers and preachers. Okay.
So you're rich.
Apparently
rich.
So, right? But from what I understand from my father, like Granddad Simmons had the seed store. Okay. And at that point in time in Bermuda, of course, there was discrimination, right? So Black people could not go to stores that were owned by white people, right? So Granddad owned the seed store, and all the black people went to the seed store. It was like a general store. Okay. They came from an extended family system, right? So my father used to say, the extended family system is great for those who are always on the receiving end. Of it. Okay.
So were you on the receiving end?
No, Dad's family, there were 7 of them, were on the giving end. So like many a times, Granddad Simmons, when he's recounting stories, used to say when things were very good, i.e. he was able to pay his employees, even to their families, the employees always had to be paid. Okay. If the business was not doing well for whatever, basically they starved. They didn't have it, which meant my father was a delivery boy at 8, 9, or 10 years old, delivering groceries to the
entrepreneur.
White people. Well, he had no choice in that matter. Okay. White people in Bermuda at that point in time, as well as he used to go to the docks when they received stuff, right? And apparently, I guess like something similar to customs or whatever. Okay. But he was very young at that, right?
Well, they say that the docks, right? The docks is like that's where all the action takes place, right?
Literally.
Things are coming in and things are going out.
And finance. Like Daddy used to say when Granddad Simmons couldn't go, Daddy went. And my father looks like his father, and he was referred to as the young Mr. Simmons. Okay. And he was interacting. He goes, with men twice his age, doing the books, receiving items, shipping items, manifestos, money, etc.
So I'm hearing a lot of money, entrepreneurship, initiative, motivation. Now, let's bring this to Montreal. So now you're born in Montreal.
Yes.
I'd like to know, as a teen growing up in Montreal, that introduction to how was it growing up when you were a teen?
So because Daddy was introduced to finances at a young age, at 19 he came to Canada, Peterborough. He studied accounting. And then from there, he moved to Montreal. Okay. And fortunately, at that point in time, you had 2 jobs for black females and males. A maid, right? My mom was a secretary. And for Dad, he was a grease monkey while he was in university. And then the only thing he could get was to be a porter. And my father refused.
And a grease monkey, for those who do not know what a grease monkey is?
It is when you used to go to the gas stations, and at the point in time, they had a guy filling your car and checking your oil and doing your windshield wiper. Okay. So that is how he paid his way through university. Okay. He had saved up money, and the Bermudan dollar devalued, right? So that means he had to work for his money. Okay. Consequently, my father refused to be a porter with his accounting degree, and he looked for international companies. So a lot of times, like, Daddy ended up being a controller of international companies.
Wow, interesting.
Okay, so when I grew up, right, in energy, when I would speak with my father, he would tell me stories mainly about how money impacted upon people, but more importantly, the lack of money, how it impacted upon people, specifically the black community. Okay. He also, as well as, Daddy was an accountant, so like I remember there were a couple French-Canadian families that he did taxes for, and Italian families that he did taxes for. So he would talk a lot about money, thought process of money, what one group of people does pertaining to this area, what other groups of people do. So with my father, there was a lot of how money was a tool for somebody to achieve whatever objective that they wanted.
Okay, so I'm thinking now, so how was that for you now as a teenager now, And we all say that teens are reckless or like to spend or like to have a good time.
No.
Now, what were your family dynamics?
Nerd. Okay. Our family dynamics. Number one, I was a rebel at 15 or 16. I did not accept the status quo of girls do this and boys do this. So as you remember, my grandmother was a maid, right? Okay. So I got lessons on what females should do to keep a man. And at that point in time, it was cooking, cleaning, doing the dishes, which I rebelled against. It's like, if you want to get a husband, I want to be a wife. I don't want to be a maid. Okay. Consequently, I would read a lot. I loved the library. Okay. I would go to the library and read. At that point in time, also there was the
was that the
Black
by the
Power?
Way, was that the Fraser Hickson Library?
Fraser Hickson Library.
You see, we have a lot in common.
We have the phrase. Yeah, I would read any feminist novel, right, and utilize that as what I thought was acceptable arguments against my parents, well, specifically my mother, my grandmother, of why a woman doesn't do this. Okay. Of course, I ultimately lost, but it didn't, still help me prepare. Mm-hmm. And with my father, it was more of, I think, remember, that's when Dr. Ruth was there.
Okay, Dr. Ruth.
Julia, Judy, whatever. Okay. So, like, not the femme fatale, Simone de Beauvoir was there. So I would pick up her books from the library and read them. Okay. And so I would introduce subjects which, in hindsight, I realized my parents were not comfortable about, right? But I would still read anyway.
Okay. Here's something. I mean, I'm hearing that, you had mentioned your dad was working when he was young.
Yep.
When did you have your first job?
At 18 years old.
At 18.
Yes. Okay. We spent our summers in camps, and at 16, 17, and 18, when all of our friends got to work, well, we got an allowance. Okay. I was crap.
The allowance. Yes, the allowance.
Yes, we got an allowance. Okay. It was given to us by my grandmother. My grandmother lived with us.
Did you have to do chores to get the allowance?
We had to do chores. Actually, we had to do chores all the time. Oh, the girls had specific roles. The boys had specific roles. Okay. They did not intermix. But we got an allowance in conjunction with our chores. Okay. And my father gave us an allowance to learn how to manage money at a young age. I was crappy, horrible. Like my youngest brother, he always had, I think we were given something like 25 cents a week or something. He always had 10 cents. My sister was a little bit thrifty. I was always, okay, can I borrow money? Of course, to buy candy by the end of the week. Yeah. And my other brother, he was generous,
But another thing, and you're saying, this is now, and you're around 18 years old, but I mean, just for, for the youth who are listening to this, I mean, back then, right, stores were not open on Sundays, right?
That's right.
Stores were not open. We didn't have the ATM machines.
No, we didn't have no ATM machines. Stores were not open on Sundays. As I said, I come from a family of preachers and teachers, so I was brought up in Union United Church. My father was very active in NCC. Okay. But the reason why I say we only started to work at 18 years old, it's because my father, like when my sister and I begged to work because all of our friends were working, that means, oh my gosh, we could actually buy clothes that we wanted to buy, shoes for our taste. Yeah. And my father made a statement which I can appreciate now. He goes, you've got the rest of your life to work. Okay? So basically, live your life and your youth now, right? At 18 or 19, when you have no alternative, that's when you start to work because you have the rest of your life to work. Okay. So which meant for me, summer school.
Summer school, okay.
Summer school at Dawson College.
Okay, wow. So, I mean, those early, we'll call it interventions, or there's talks or these lessons that your dad passed down to you, did it shape you?
Oh, yes.
As, now you're 18, now you're talking about Dawson College, and did it shape you how your relationship with money, your spending habits?
Definitely. So I would hear a lot of stories. Because Daddy was an accountant, I also found out apparently he was executor of people's wills, as well as he used to be on the board of NCC. So when he came home, like, he would talk about financial situations, not the people. But I would hear so-and-so died, and they had to pass a hat around to bury the person.
Somebody.
Okay?
It still happens today.
It still happens today. Also, I would hear things about families. Normally, families who, like, the wives would go to Daddy and speak to them and say, please talk to my husband because he's crappy in managing money, and the family is starving, right? And like, I ended up working at the Bay with one of the children. And, you know, he said that. So I would ask questions like, who would be the best person to manage money? Now, my mother came from managing money is a man's role, without fail. My question would be only to my father, because it would be considered rude and insulting to my mother. I go, what happened if the guy is stupid, right? If he doesn't know how to manage money. As I would hear many stories from different people, what I would hear was culturally West Indian, predominantly West Indian, Italian, sometimes French Canadian. It is the male's role to manage money. And often they did not do it well.
Well, here's something.
Because the family, the wives, and the children would suffer.
Well, here's something. I mean, they say that the male to manage the money, I mean, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing too as well, but the male is to be the one responsible for bringing in the money. The wife now you've got that money that comes in. She's now has to make that money stretch. She's got to do the shopping. She's got to take care of the kids. She's got to do that.
Okay, so I understand the distinction.
And I don't know if that's something that's still, you know, I mean, because I hear it. I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that, you know what, it's the wife, once again, people, we're going back in time now, that the wife was expected to do all of these things, like make magic at home, like, you know, take care of all of these things. And that's
so I do understand what you're saying. So number one, that is the male actually having a job that earned money that they can bring home. So like one time my father told me a story when he was in Bermuda, and it was pence and whatever. And the man worked on the docks. And he gambled all the money away. And so he saw this man, elderly man, have to go home and tell his wife, there is no money. Okay? Secondly, because we come from family of preachers, right? Our word is our bond. So I would hear many families in which the man is a beautiful and wonderful and caring man and makes diddly squat. And so now the wife has to work with diddly squat, but he was given the opportunity of making much more money, but, it was either from the wrong side of the street or it was considered sinful money. We're not talking about gambling or money. So, And then I would also hear stories about men who would earn a lot of money, like professors in the United States and physicians in the United States. So these were family friends who would earn a lot of money and spend it and can't even identify how they spend it. So the wives used to go to my father and say, please talk to so-and-so and just find a way to let him understand that he's not less of a man if he lets me manage the finance. Okay? And the stories that I heard from, I mean, one was a physician in the States at that time. So this guy made money. But he couldn't tell you, you give him $50, it's gone. You give him $500 and it's gone.
So Gina, are we saying that, I mean, and I don't know if it's the situation now, but say back then, was it something that was expected? Was it an ego thing that the man would not want to relinquish the financial responsibilities? there's a lot of different things. And just another thing too as well, because I was in a workshop about maybe 10 years ago, and a lot of situations that's come about where wealthy widows living in Westmount and their spouse dies.
That's right, and they don't know diddly squat.
Diddly squat.
See, because so to answer your question, like I would hear a lot of these stories when I was a teenager, right? And during CEJA, okay, a lot of different stories, and I would hear about the wealthy widow, right? So I would hear mainly, I would say, Anglo-Saxon families, right, in which the man made a lot of money, and the wife was there. Her job was to run the household. The man gave her X amount of dollars and ran the household, but didn't say anything about bank accounts, wills, mutual funds, investments. Yeah. That was taken care of by the man, and that was expected. So depending upon where you grew up, depending upon your influences, I have met people literally from a wide range of circumstances in which it has been either beneficial or not. And I would say for the female, you have to remember I'm coming from a feminist.
People, once again, speaking with Gina May Simmons, we are here with the Scale Up Financial Literacy Project. We are talking about seniors and finance and money. And, we're talking about money. And Gina, do you still find that today, and I'm saying for not just seniors, is it a taboo to talk about money? Because here you're coming from your background, and this is something seems it was discussed openly.
With my father.
With your father.
With my father. Well, only with my father.
Only with your father.
So when I started working, right, I'm a nurse, right? I spent what I perceive now an eternity in school.
Okay.
Finally get to nurse, and I worked at the Montreal General Hospital. Okay. The first week that I was there was a financial planning seminar in the building. Okay. Right? And so week one, and I went down, and I decided that I wanted to be financially independent. Number one, I was not comfortable with the idea of completely depending upon a male. Okay. Because unfortunately, I heard too many negative stories where the male, a beautiful person, financially the female suffers. Okay. Secondly, in my family, we're long livers. The females are long livers.
Long livers.
Long livers. Okay. My grandmother died at 110. Okay. So that means...
So you're going to outlive your spouse.
In all probability. Well, I don't know, right?
As we say, for the West, it says the husband not got dead off first.
That's exactly it. So, when I started working, I know it's long livers, right? And thirdly, I wanted to be financially independent. So I said, still live with my parents, but I wanted to be financially independent. Okay. So I remember coming home and saying, "Oh, Mom, I attended this financial seminar, and I'm going to do my will." Okay? I hadn't even gotten a paycheck week one. Remember saying that in the kitchen? And Daddy was at the table, and he goes, "That's a good idea." And my mom promptly laughed at me and said, "Why do you want to do that? Your father is there, and he will take care of everything." And I said the horrible words, "Oh my gosh, God forbid. What happens if he drops dead? What are we going to do now?" My mother's response...
You're wishing death on your dad?
That's exactly it. My mother's response was, "How dare you say that? You don't wish death upon your father."
Yeah. Okay?
So then I realized the thought process. And then, of course, this baby mother, "Sweetheart, you don't have anything to have a will for." And I go, "Yes, I do. I've got my sewing machine, I've got my material, and I have needlework." Okay? And so she sort of laughed, but that was it. So, from that experience, what I learned was different people in different households or different people in the same household have a different thought process on money, who should control it and why, and expectations. Wow. Okay? So then after that, I spent a lot more time listening and learning.
Well, I mean, it's very, very interesting because, I mean, from a young age, you were very proactive as far as with educating yourself around finances, being independent, which is not usually the case for most people. And how has all of that now? We fast forwarded to today. You're recently retired. You're the new senior.
I'm the new senior.
You're a new senior. You're a new senior.
Yes.
Just how has that prepared you now for retirement?
Okay, so David Edie, our next person, was my first financial advisor. Right. So I said and went, and I go week 2 of working. I got a paycheck. I decided identify my long-term goals. I was going to own a house. Don't know where, don't know how much it costs, but I was going to own a house. Number 2, I was going to go back to school, and this time I had to pay for it because Daddy paid for it, but Dad and Mom paid for my schooling. I went to like 2 universities, and I spent a long time in university. So, you know, like, I mean, I worked part-time.
But it wasn't that expensive back then
No,
as it is
wasn't
today.
that expensive. No, that's true. It's a lot more expensive right now, but it wasn't. But the thing is, though, from my perspective, right, you know, like I still had to buy my clothes.
Responsibilities, right? Of life, brother.
You know, I mean, I was a paper girl at 21. I was the only paper girl at CEGEP. I felt like horrible until I realized people enjoyed the fact that they had somebody in school. So it means they got their papers on time, right? So how did that affect me when I was older? When I first started working and did not have any money, I already identified long-term objectives. I had learned how to plan financially. When I spoke to David Edie the first time, he used words that I had no idea what he was talking about. But I realized I can read. So off I went to the Fraser Hickson Library, and I went to the money section, and I read every single book in the money section, every single book. That experience helped me identify, because, I mean, it was like financial planners, money, how to manage housewives. That's when I got, what's the name of that book? The Wealthy Barber.
The Wealthy Barber,
Barber, The Wealthy Barber 2. Also books on, like, people who want money and how do they interact with that. So I got a diverse experience, diverse information about money, sources, what people have done, and the consequences.
Wow.
As a result, I go, okay. So, number 1, David said, get a budget. I hate doing budgets. I was horrible at doing budgets. But in one of the books, I found out electronic budgets. So what I did was I got an electronic budget, and I found the free electronic budget. And I started budgeting.
They had free stuff back then?
They had a lot of free stuff. I was a queen of finding free stuff. Queen.
There were no apps for that, people.
No apps for that. You know, they went to the library, and, you know, I was like, say...
what did the fish cards there?
Literally.
Periodical index.
I found out, like, spreadsheets. Crappy at that. I found, you know, like, I was part of YNAB, the beta group, the beginning group when it was free. YNAB is the financial tool that I use now, which is You Need a Budget by Jesse. Jesse, I don't remember his last name. And it took a while to enter in the information into the computer. But what it did was it helped me plan and project with my current cash flow, anticipated expenses, and how much money I'd have left over. And a lot of times there was no money left over.
Gina, Gina May.
Yes.
Are there, or do you have any fear? Was there any fears back then that led you up now to, you know, managing your money? I'm speaking for myself because I've always had a fear of being poor, and it's not because I grew up in that environment, but I could just remember a lot of my friends who came up here from the Caribbean and they're single-parent families, or they were living with their older brothers and sisters, and they had it really, really rough. And if I look back on it now for myself, I was working since I was 11 years old. I was always saving my money, kind of being independent. But for me, a lot of it was fear-driven, because I said, I don't want to be in that situation, so I'm going to take care of what I have to take care of. And being independent, I've never been somebody to be really dependent on my parents, because they always provided what we needed, the basics, but anything else we wanted to get, we had to go out there and get it ourselves.
Yes, I did have fears. I did not want to be a poor female that I heard my father talk about.
Okay.
Okay. So fortunately, we grew up. I'm an Aquarian. I'm fly. So they call me fly or crazy. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff that when I was growing up, I really didn't pay attention to. Now, looking back, I realize both my parents were working, okay? So the concept of us, and we had my grandmother in the house, okay?
Wow. So you had a very strong dynamic there.
Yes, well, yes.
And supports were there.
Support, Granny was a domestic at that point in time. She made, $35 a week, right? But she was the one who gave us our allowance and, forced ideology on me. And you have to remember, I'm a feminist at 15 years old. Okay, so it was good, but yes, there was support. So now I realize in hindsight that we always had two parents that were working. Okay, which was good. As well as my grandmother, we were working. My parents made specific decisions about how they were going to keep the girls active and the boys active. They never really said anything about how much money we had or didn't have, okay? I never noticed anything. If I wanted, I remember my graduation dress. I sewed. I saw a dress that I liked. It was Ginas material. At that point in time, I would always go to the bargain section, but this was, oh my gosh, $10 a yard. And I was in elementary school, and I had to get the right needles. My machine, probably an El Cheapo one, could not do it. So I had to get permission to go to school to make my dress. So that means all the people in school heard about Gina's rich dress.
It was probably a singer.
A singer it was, that's right. Singer. So I went and I bought it. The reason why I'm saying that is because I did not think twice that I would not be able to get it, that my parents couldn't afford it, okay? For me, it was more permission from other people to do what I wanted. Okay. But what that did was, in church, actually, Rosedale Church at that point in time, I was part of Girl Guides and elementary school. Everybody grew up together. And one of the members there, he was a university professor, all right? And he went to Daddy, and he said to Daddy, his daughter and our daughter were graduating at the same time. So he went to Daddy because he'd heard about, oh my gosh, Gina had to go to school to cut this dress to get this expensive material. And he said to him, oh, geez, we didn't think you could afford it.
Wow. Okay.
My father's response was, hey, I support 7 people, which is true, in our family. And frankly, I'm so fucking rich, I don't care what you think.
Okay.
And I'm going like, ooh, remember when my father swore? And, ooh, apparently we are rich.
Okay.
But from my brother's perspective, we never got a new car. Okay? There were some things like, if one people identify what is rich, if rich is getting a new car, we always had a secondhand car. Okay. We did family vacations, camping, as opposed to picking up and flying. Okay. So it really depends upon what you perceive or what you identify as what is wealthy.
Wealthy, okay.
And what is not. And also, when you talk to somebody else and you say, oh, you're wealthy, what does that person mean when they look at you and say, you're wealthy.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
how
as
you
I said, yeah,
wealthy or rich.
It's a different perception for everyone, you know. I mean, I guess traditionally most people would look at it, what kind of car you drive, what kind of house, where you live, the kind of clothes you wear. I mean, we as human beings, right? We're prejudiced. We look at somebody and we'll form a judgment on a particular thing.
Right. But see, like for me, different thought process. I go, if you're in North America and you've got a job and you've got a credit card, you can get any car you want just as long as you're able to make the payments.
True. That's
you can get any clothes that you want just as long as you're able to make the payments. Depending upon what year you are, if you have enough money for a down payment, if they allow, well, I mean, in Daddy's time, Blacks were not permitted to live in certain areas. Now you are. Yes, to live in a specific area, you have. But Granddad, you know, if you go to a bank and you buy, what's it called, repossessed houses? Okay, because I learned all about repossessed houses. There is a market of housing that you get that unfortunately people can't pay.
Okay, yeah.
So you can get a humongous house in a quote-unquote high ideal area and not really pay a lot for it.
Yeah, but talking about, you just said living in North America, okay, if you have a credit card, you could get whatever you want and things like that. But don't you think that perception or that train of thought, which I believe the banks and the big financial institutions are pushing, has put a lot of seniors, a lot of people in debt because you're saying, oh, you got this credit card, you got the spending power, you can get whatever you want. Not necessarily you can afford it, and now you're in debt.
Okay, so back to my father, right? When we had our credit cards, number one, his statement was, sure, you can have a credit card. You have to make sure you know how to pay it off before you make your purchase. Okay? Mm-hmm. So it gives you the opportunity to get something.
Exactly.
But I know for me, I look, and the first thing I say is, number one, I don't like to pay interest. Okay? Mm-hmm. I only pay interest if life circumstances happen out of my control. And then I plan the next 2 or 3 months with YNAB when I can get the balance low.
Okay.
Right? And if I know that I'm going to spend, I want a new pair of shoes. Okay? And I'm going to put it on my credit card, and I buy the new pair of shoes in the first of the month. By the 16th of the month, I already know my paycheck is coming in, and the cost of those shoes have already been planned and paid for. Mm-hmm. But I do agree that banks right now are really pushing people to get credit cards and to go into debt because there is this unrealistic expectation of keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up. It's all we're bombarded with messaging, and even now on our cell phones. Before it used to be the TV, newspaper. Now it's on the cell phones. It's everywhere.
No, for me, because I read, right? Like I remember reading something once about the Queen, and a reporter or the paparazzi guy was taking a picture, and the guy made a comment, oh, you wore this suit at such and such an event, like 10 years ago. And her response was, yes, a good suit should last 20 years.
Great answer.
And then I go, okay, so you've got the external people all pushing new this, new that, whatever. And I'm going like, the Queen? That lady has a tiny bit of money.
Tiny
bit of money. So if she can wear a good suit for 10 years, 15 years, why can't I? So I know for me, you have to remember, my thought process I'm now realizing was very, very, very different from a lot of other people. And I sewed. So I liked something, I would wear it all the time, never realizing that other people, which I found out 10 years later, thought I was poor.
Well, here's Gina. Does this still exist that women would go and buy a dress and then you come to a social occasion and you see somebody wearing the same dress? Does
Yeah. Well, no.
Does that cause a problem?
Yes, it does.
It does.
You know, I mean, because there is this
Who wears it better?
Yeah, literally, who wears it better with better accessories, etc. You know, yeah. I mean, that thought process still occurs, right? Mm-hmm. What I do find, there is a lot of advertisement influence to what's the latest trend in whatever item there is. And for you to be accepted, you have to follow this trend. Okay? It's still there. All I do know, it takes, like, for me, I would look at that and I go, geez, okay, I've got no idea who they are. Okay? And who decides what trend is this? And then my thought is, darn, if it's a new trend, I wonder if they sell shares in that, because I want to get shares.
Wow.
So, but I reiterate, my thought process, I realize now, was very different.
Okay. People, you are listening to Gina Mae Simmons. My name is Brian Smith. I'm here for the Scale Up Financial Literacy Project, which is an initiative from the Multicultural and Diversity Project. We are talking here. This is episode 3 of our Seniors podcast. So, Gina, what words of advice, because you are a new senior, could you share for, I guess, the older seniors or the seniors that are coming up like yourself? Like, what are some words of wisdom that you could share with them? Because everybody has a story. And I said, one of the things here with this podcast is that we want to hear the stories of the people. And what you've mentioned for the past 45 minutes is very, very interesting. And everybody, we're a product of our environment and our surroundings and our experiences. But what could you share, were words of wisdom that you could share for the people listening in today?
Okay. Before I answer that, I'm a nurse, okay? And I worked at the Montreal General on surgery. And then I went into, then I worked at nursing homes, long-term care nursing homes, exceedingly wealthy ones. I worked in hospitals to get a lot of experience, right? Worked in blood, and then I worked for a nursing agency. The purpose of that is to say that a lot of my clients were elderly people. And I would see their situations, their health situations, a lot of it directly related to their financial situation, okay? As well as family situations. So, what words of wisdom could I say to senior people? Number one, I would say be prepared financially. It's not too late to say, get your will done. It's called a living medical. Will. That's right. Okay? Somebody has to know your business, because unfortunately, and just yesterday, I heard a story where there is an elderly person who was found on the floor, had to stay on the floor until the next day to come put in the hospital, may or may have had a will that was done in 1922. The person who's responsible for the elderly person is in the United States or in Canada, not cognitive. And the old person has nobody to speak for them. Nobody knows anything about them. And unfortunately, they are left to the discretion of the state. Yes. Okay? I understand there's a privacy issue. I understand that you want to maintain your independence as long as possible. I have heard a gazillion stories of wills change, who cheat, or whatever. And I understand that there is a risk, okay? But as a nurse, It is very distressing to hear. So like these are people in my entourage and older, and to see and be witness to elderly people coming in, and then you're trying to get, you're trying to get them 25 cents to do something, and it's not available because they think they're maintaining their independence, and they are, but long term it ends up being detrimental.
Detrimental, yeah.
Long
I think,
term.
as I said, I think a lot of these things, as I said, is it still the whole taboo? We don't want people to know your business.
Yes.
And I think, you know what, in the end, right, it causes so much discomfort and stress in the end because, one, the person can't get the proper care, or now you're left scrambling for information, and you hear that the government or the state or the province will come in and take this.
I know of a lady beautiful lady, and her objective was not to remain here in Quebec. Okay, so she was planning to leave the country. Well, unfortunately, she did not. Okay, her mental status deteriorated rapidly. Okay. The person that she was living with died. Okay. That person was from out east someplace. So her family came in, took the lady who died, and left the apartment to my friend, who was not working, who was a senior. Okay? All of a sudden, she couldn't pay the rent because there was some type of exchange, I assume, because we just never discussed that. Yeah. She is now out on the street, homeless. This is okay?
Very distressing.
Very distressing. She's not telling anybody anything because her faculties are impaired. She only has friends around her, and I'm going, as soon as I said she's going to be homeless, this is what we're going to have to do. But because Gina is fly, and I have a tendency to think many steps ahead, right? It was, no. Anyway, she went with the family, just a friend. A negative situation happened. She ended up in hospital number 1, hospital number 2, and was seized.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that we need to have these, and I would call them uncomfortable discussions earlier on, and put everything on the table. And I could even say for myself too as well, because a couple of years ago, thank God both of my parents are still here, but my mom said, we need to sit down and talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, what stuff? Well, and you're talking about will, talking about preparing for a funeral, and all these types of things that it put, because it's going to come. It's going to come.
With my husband, right, I literally dragged him twice to get our will done. So my grandmother died. She put my father as the executor of the will. My father died before my grandmother. 5 years after Dad died, I said to Mom, Ma, don't you think it's time to change Granny's will? Yeah. And she goes like, why? Why do you want to, wish death upon her? I go like, no, Mommy. The last time I looked, Daddy is the executor of Granny's will. Yeah. And the man's only been dead 5 years. Which she goes like, oh. Yeah. Okay. So I know for me, unfortunately, because I encounter those situations on a daily basis. Okay. I know the importance of, we got to get the will done. You're supposed to repeat it every 5 years. In my calendar, right, I put 5. I may extend it 6 or 7, right? And I force my family members to give a response to. Yeah. Okay. I do agree. It is costly now. It's expensive. But what happens is that you are really assisting those who live. Yeah. I do agree with you. It is not a very pleasant.
No, it's never. It's never.
And not a pleasant circumstance.
Never.
But the only thing I do know 100%, if you are born, You will die.
You will die. You will die. And I guess that's how people who own funeral homes, and when they come with the marketing and stuff like that, and to make it comfortable and let you know it's going to happen one day, and there's going to be a cost to it, and you should put these things in place and how you could benefit and make it less comfortable. But I guess for a lot of us, even myself too, I don't want to talk about dying. And I could remember in high school, and they're talking about insurance. What do I need insurance for? I'm never going to get sick. I'm never going to hurt my knee. I'm never going to get this. Insurance, it's a waste of money. Yeah. And these things come up. So it's just very, very important, people, that you look into these things. As I said, whether it be uncomfortable, you would have to have these discussions, have these talks, and put things into place. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, as I said, this is Brian Smith here. I am here for the Multicultural Diversity Project, our Scale Up Financial Literacy podcast. I want to thank Gina May Simmons for sitting in today. We had a nice chit-chat, and I hope we may have to bring you back, because we're just scratching the surface. As I said, people are talking about their stories, their experiences. But Gina, I want to thank you very much for sitting in with us today. And enjoy, as I said, you are a new senior. Yes, not an old one, but a new one. Senior. New senior. Maybe we could make a T-shirt with that. Yeah. Let's call it a slogan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.